Multimedia, Acción Empresarial, presenta Gerencia para Todos.
Talking with Professor and author, Dr. Gary Orren, to know more about the vital issue of persuasion. Gary Orren is a professor at John Fitzgerald Kennedy School of Government here in Harvard. He is a PhD and a specialist in persuasion with many research papers that improve the concept of persuasion and its application in business and real world. Thank you for this interview.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And the first question is, what is the persuasion and why it is so important to you?
Persuasion is convincing other people to voluntarily, willingly change their mind, change their behavior, to bring them in line with what we want to do, with our cherished goals. It's so important because most of the time we can't just order and command people to do what we want. We need to enlist their support, to induce them to do what we want them to do. You know, when we're in school, and if we're smart, and if we get the answer right, they usually give us an A on the exam. That doesn't happen in the real world. In the real world, being smart and getting the right answer is the first step, hopefully. But then you've got to get other people to willingly go along with what you want to do. And so that's why persuasion is so important. Incidentally, not just in professional life, but in personal life as well, at the office and at home.
Which is, in your opinion, that's a little bit like asking somebody who is their favorite child of their children. I love them all, okay? But you mentioned which one is yes. I think that the number one, the principle that really has primacy is the principle I call knowing the audience and its predispositions. What's already in the heads of the people that you want to persuade, whether it's one person, two people, 2 million people, that's your audience. What do they already think? What's in their head? And you need to, as a persuader, really understand where they're coming from. Not to agree with them, that's why you want to persuade them. You actually disagree. But to understand what is it that's important to them, what's relevant to them, what do they care about. That's the key to then persuading them to change their mind. In fact, Alvaro, it is less difficult than it seems than doing it, but I'll give you some suggestions of how we can do it. It's more challenging is to even want to do that, to have the consciousness and the determination to do that, because most of us want to spend time on the message, our charts, our graphs, our argument, whatever our argument is, and we want to fine-tune that, and we don't spend too much time on trying to think about the audience. But when we do try to think about the audience, we want to know how to, first of all, we listen. That's an unusual thing to do. We usually have fairly primitive listening powers. We're not so good at listening. Usually when it's time for us to listen, we're rehearsing what we're going to say next and not listening so carefully, right? So that's one thing that we talk about in my workshops, is how to improve our listening ability. We can also talk to other people about the people that we're going to talk to. So when I come to one of these programs, I don't know the people personally, but I know other people like them that I've worked with for a long time, so I can make some inferences, some speculations, some reasonable speculations about some of the things that are on their minds. Very valid. It's the best we can do. We do the best we can. We use all available resources, but it's available resources to try to climb into people's heads to understand where they're coming from. But the main issue, again, is the effort to do that, not the how to do it. The how to do it is pretty simple. It's even having the desire to do it.
So what is the basic tools toolkit or weaponry for practical persuasion skills?
I think that the main toolkit consists of one or two frameworks, what I call frameworks of persuasion, things that help us kind of organize our thinking before we try to persuade somebody. Some ways of moving the information around and organizing the material. That's number one. And secondly, a set of really scientifically proven principles of persuasion that basically come from the behavioral sciences, social psychology, political science, communication theory, where there's a lot of research behind these principles that really work. There's a handful, I focus on around 10 of them, usually in the workshops, that really work. They're very effective. They are, incidentally, every one of them, absolutely self-evident and common sense. They're just not common practice. And that's what we focus on and try to get them into our common practice.
Your experience in this kind of practice, in the business world, what is the experience about the application of this principle?
The experience really is quite overwhelming. When I have contact with students after the program, which I do, in many cases over many years, and ask them, does this stuff work? What works best, and so forth. And incidentally, I got into this business because I was interested in attitudes and attitude formation, where attitudes come from, polling, and so forth. So I am an unquenchable pollster, and I love contacting people to find out what's been their experience. The message that comes back is that they are much more effective persuaders when they use this material. They give me examples from their work where they really had many triumphs. And I would say somewhere between many and most say they are much more effective by using the few frameworks and the principles of persuasion in their work.
Cultural relation. For example, in this seminar, there are people of all countries of America, Peru, Venezuela, etc. What's your experience about this?
My experience, yes, it's a very diverse audience from very different cultures, different backgrounds, different countries. It is interesting. The principles of persuasion that we discuss are universal. They cut across national boundaries. They are very basic to humankind. They're very general in that sense. So that what we talk about is applicable in Colombia, in Peru, in Venezuela, in Paraguay, Argentina, Ecuador. And in fact, they're true in Papua New Guinea, in Bangladesh.
Well, thank you for this interview and for your kind attention, for the strong relation. Campus
Multimedia, Acción Empresarial presentó Gerencia para Todos con Rafael Nieves.